So the question is, what was my father like? And it's way longer than a 3-minute video, I would guess. I don't know how long this is going to be, so I'm just going to record this off app, upload the first 3 minutes of it here. If you want to see the rest of it, you're going to have to go to my YouTube channel where I'll upload the rest of it there, the video in its entirety there. So my father was an extremely flawed human being who, for whatever reason, I absolutely adored for a vast majority of my life. My father was not a very affectionate man, but he was not raised by very affectionate people. I have a ton of people on my father's side of the family who are quite possibly closer to me than any other human beings on the planet, with the exception of my wife. They mean more to me than anybody else on the planet. You know what I mean? But my grandparents on my father's side were just cold, unemotional, calculating human beings. And that came across in the way they presented themselves, in the way they held themselves, in the way they dealt with people. My grandparents on my father's side, just to kind of give you a little bit of background to my father first, were, my grandfather fought in World War II in the Navy. He was at D-Day +3 and then did a tour in the Philippines. My grandmother was a stay-at-home mom, a housewife of that era. When my grandfather returned from service, he started, they're from southern Indiana, they came to Chicago, and he started a machine shop, Blanchard Grinding, in the city of Chicago. My father and his brother and his sister, my only aunt and uncle on my father's side, were made to live with their grandparents in early age, and then were able to come up to Chicago apparently later in life to attend like high school. So that's kind of a fucked up upbringing to begin with, especially when the people who bore you are emotionless and don't really show you that much love on top of it. So my father, of the three, became the partier, the rabble-rouser. My aunt became the princess that needed to be protected, and my uncle, Jake, was the one that everybody believed was going to be the next knight in shining armor. He owned his own business. He was a good-looking guy, had a beautiful wife, was very successful in life. My father was the one that liked to party and run around and do lines off the bar. Go figure. So he had his fair share of partying, and then he drag raced. He was an amateur drag racer at places like US 30, Route 66, Oswego. He was a Dodge guy. He raced Dodge Chargers, Dodge Challengers, and so I grew up in the earliest stages of my life around drag strips. My parents should have never gotten together. My father was this drag race driver in his late 20s, and my mother was a 16-year-old high school girl when they met. She was scooping ice cream at the Cock Robin ice cream store. I don't know if you guys have any of those around anymore. That used to sit in the parking lot of the Gene and Jude's. My father used to go get his hot dogs and then go over to the ice cream shop and have my mother request that my mother make his ice cream, like some kind of weird pervert, I guess. And they hooked up, and I was the byproduct of that one night stand. I missed the wedding by 3 months. I was the best man at my father's next 2 weddings, so I often joked with him that had he just waited a few more months to get married, I could have been the best man at all 3 of his weddings. Anyway, when I was a young child, what was my father like? He was working all the time. He worked a day shift job, he worked a night shift job, and he turned wrenches at a shop on the weekend, so he was never around. And when he was around, he was so fucking tired, all he wanted to do was sit down, chill the fuck out, watch some TV, and veg. So we didn't... my father never taught me to shave or how to catch a ball or shit like that. You know, that's shit that I learned on my own. And some people will say, well, your father was a bad father for that. Do I wish he was a little bit more attentive? Yeah, I also understand the situation he was in at the time. The thing about him was because I believe he was raised by these emotionless people, he himself showed very little emotion. So my father's way of helping you was financial. You got a problem? How much is it going to cost to make it go away? The man never said, unfortunately, he never said, I love you. Not that I can recall. Right up until the day of his death. As a matter of fact, there were a few times, including like when I was going to get married and shit like that, where he put his arm around me and like teared up and said, "Atta boy," while slapping me on the back. And I knew that that was as close as he could come to saying it. So, even though he couldn't say it, I know he loved me. He just didn't know how to say it. It was an awkward thing for him. He is the reason why I tell my kids I love them every time I leave the house, every time I hang up the phone, and every night before bed. He was a worker dad, you know. I would sit in the front window at my aunt's house where we had the holidays every year and wait for him. And he would never come. I would often refuse to eat Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner until he came, and then he never came. He got handed a lot of bullshit in his life, and he started a lot of his own bullshit, right? He caused a lot of his own problems early on in life and got himself into a couple of jams, but he also got fucked over a lot in life. My mother fucked him over severely in the divorce that he didn't even know he was signing. His second wife took everything as well, and he entered his third marriage to the woman who he probably should have been married to for the longest period of time, although they wouldn't have made it either had they married earlier in life. He entered that marriage with next to nothing. I mean, the clothes on his back, a suitcase, that's it. He worked hard his entire life, and then medical ailments just ravaged him for the last few decades of his life. And when his wife, my second stepmother, and the one woman who treated me more like a mom than anybody else, JoJo, passed away. She passed away at the end of July in 2011. He moved in the next day, and then he passed away in July of 2015. And those last 4 years were hard. He was very, very lonely. He was very, very angry. His medical problems were getting worse. He was living here with us, and you feel like you don't have any privacy, you don't have any independence, and it was a rough last few years for him. Nobody deserves that shit. Nobody. Even somebody who did the things he did. Like I said, in other videos, I've told you about how when I was 15, he moved back to Chicago and gave me the option of staying in Linton and living on my own. You don't give your 15-year-old kid the option. So when I hear people tell me that my father was a bad father for doing that, I understand where they're coming from, and I don't disagree with them. But overall, he was my dad. And for every goddamn flaw that man had, there is one constant. No matter how much of a hell I ever made his life, no matter how many problems I bestowed upon him, no matter how many times he had to come to my aid, if I ever picked up the phone and needed that man, he was fucking there for me. Every fucking time. And while I strive to be a better father than he did, if I can live up to that level of his dedication to me through his life, to always be there for me, to my kids, if I can live up to that, then I will have considered myself to be a success. So, that's what my father was.